You know, what if I told you that for some people, the simple act of the seasons changing could trigger a serious depression, and that the prescription to treat it wasn't a pill, but just light? Well, that's not science fiction. Today, we're going to dive into the real science behind this and how we can actually fight back.
I know, it sounds a little out there, right? But this is a very real treatment for a very real condition. So how on earth does it work? Well, to get a handle on that, we first need to zoom out a bit and look at how the entire natural world deals with the changing of the seasons. Think about it. When the days get shorter, a groundhog goes into hibernation. A weasel's fur turns from brown to a snowy white. Now, these aren't just random nature facts. They're huge biological shifts, powerful survival instincts that are triggered by the change in daylight. And it turns out, some of us humans go through our own kind of traumatic seasonal changes, too. And that brings us right to the heart of our investigation today. We're looking at a seasonal mystery that affects millions of people every single year. Let's start uncovering the puzzle of winter depression. And in doing so, we're going to see just how deeply our own bodies are connected to the ancient rhythms of our planet. The official name for this condition is seasonal affective disorder, or SAD for short. Basically, it's a specific kind of mood disorder where depressive episodes are literally tied to the calendar, almost always kicking in during those shorter, darker days of fall and winter, and it's way more common than you might realize. Now, we need to be really clear on this. This is so much more than just the winter blues. You know, a lot of us feel a little sluggish in the winter, and that's normal. But SAD is a serious, often debilitating condition. The symptoms you're looking at here, that deep sadness, that fatigue you just can't shake, even suicidal thoughts, these are the very same symptoms of major non-seasonal depression. And this isn't just some fringe issue. Researchers think that around 1% of the population experiences full-blown SAD. So what in the world is going on inside our bodies to cause this? Well, to figure that out, we have to look at our internal timing system, that biological clock that runs our entire day. This leads us to our first big clue, the body's internal clock. I mean, think of it as the master controller for our daily lives. It messes with everything from when we sleep, then wake up, to our hormone levels, and yeah, even our mood. And it is incredibly sensitive to light. Okay, this is where it gets really cool. So when sunlight hits your eye, there are these special cells in your retina that shoot a signal straight to this tiny little part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That's our biological clock. And what does this clock do? It controls the release of melatonin, the hormone that makes you sleepy. So at night, it turns the melatonin faucet on. In the morning, sunlight tells it to turn it right back off. It's a beautiful system, really. Okay, so if the clock is the main mechanism, what's breaking it in the winter for people with SAD? Well, researchers have identified two prime suspects, a couple of leading theories that try to explain what's going wrong. And what's interesting is they both circle back to that sleep hormone, melatonin. All right, let's meet our two main suspects. The first theory, over on the left, says that shorter days just cause our body to pump out melatonin for longer stretches each night. It's almost like our body's trying to hibernate. But the second theory, the phase shift on the right, says it's not about how much melatonin, it's about the timing. The entire 24-hour clock gets pushed out of whack. And you can see how this phase shift theory has a really direct effect. If your clock is running late, what they call a phase delay, your body is still flooding your system with sleep hormones when your alarm clock is blaring. Your biology is literally screaming at you that it's still the middle of the night. And that explains that bone-deep fatigue and why it's so incredibly hard to wake up for people with SAD. But like any good mystery, just when you think you've got it figured out, the plot thickens. Most researchers now are pretty convinced that a messed up biological clock isn't the whole story. There's new evidence that suggests our own psychology and even our culture can play a huge role. Turns out, our minds and our genes are also part of the puzzle. People with SAD are often more likely to ruminate. That's when you get stuck in a loop, just dwelling on negative thoughts. They also tend to have a more pessimistic view of winter in general. And on top of all that, there seem to be genetic risk factors, which helps explain why you sometimes see SAD run in families. And I find this quote from the research just fascinating. It suggests that our whole mindset could make a big difference if you live in a culture that actually celebrates winter, sees it as a time for cozy, fun activities, instead of something to dread that might actually protect you from developing SAD. It just shows that powerful link between our mind and our biology. And hey, just to add one more wrinkle to this whole thing, some people actually get the complete opposite, summertime SAD. This might be triggered by too much light or maybe the heat and humidity. It's just a powerful reminder that there's still so much we don't know, and the relationship between light, seasons, and our mood is way more complicated than we think.
So, with all these complex pieces, how do we actually crack the case? Well, thankfully, even with some mysteries left to solve, doctors have found some really effective ways to treat SAD and, well, bring back the light. And the best part is that the treatments can target both the biological and the psychological sides of this thing. So the good news is there are a few different ways to tackle this. You've got standard treatments like antidepressants and talk therapy, and they can be super effective. Talk therapy is especially good for helping with those negative thought patterns and stopping future episodes. But the really unique treatment for SAD, of course, is light therapy. Its whole job is to directly target that biological clock and nudge it back into a summer-like rhythm. So, what does this prescription for light actually look like? Well, it usually means sitting in front of a special light box for about 30 minutes every morning. This thing puts out a really bright, full spectrum light that basically mimics sunlight. It tells your brain, hey, it's daytime, time to shut down that melatonin factory. It's a simple idea, it's not invasive, and it can have a huge impact on your mood. But it's really important to do it with a doctor's help to make sure you get the timing and everything just right. And that really brings us to our final thought here. The fact that light therapy works is it's amazing. It's proof that we can consciously step in and tweak these deep, fundamental biological rhythms. It shows we don't have to be passive victims of the seasons. So if we can reset something as basic as our internal clock with something as simple as light, it really makes you wonder, right? What else are we capable of?